Hey, what's up, Canada and beyond? Welcome to what is going to be a very inspiring show tonight. We are going to hear from a lady that is absolutely a force of nature, just about to hit the crescendo next week. We're talking about a fight in Alberta. So, welcome back to everybody that's familiar with us. If you're not familiar with us, grab some popcorn, hold on to your hats. This is going to be an interesting discussion. If you are familiar with us, you know what to do. Hit that like, subscribe, and share, guys. We need this now more than ever. Guys, this platform isn't just a platform. This is a community, and you guys are all family. This started out just trying to get the truth out to people to help them understand the insanity around them even better. But I'll tell you what, it has developed and morphed into an international community, an international family that is working together. And the results that I'm seeing coming are phenomenal. We've gotten to a point where we're now making partnerships with people of like mind, fighting against the cabal, working together to protect people and to prepare people and to eliminate a lot of the pain and suffering that we collectively know is coming down the pipe, regardless of what lies and garbage the legacy media or the government is spewing the flavor of the day. I think we're streaming out across 11 platforms, guys. Make sure that you're following us on multiple platforms, but so that you guys can continue to get access to the information and the people and develop this parallel universe, this parallel community that those names scrolling across the bottom of the screen are allowing us to establish and create. So there, housekeeping out of the way. I got to get that out of the way at the beginning, guys, because that's all kind of foreign to me and I still trip over it a little bit. But now that that's out of the way, we'll get to the meat and potatoes. So tonight, returning to us is an attorney that the government didn't see coming. A lot of people out there look up to different attorneys and people like Jordan Peterson. Well, there is a hidden gem in the universe by the name of Lanny Roulard, who not only is an attorney extraordinaire, but also has a degree in psychology. So when she threatens to come and chase me down and cut down the tree fort that I'm living in, I take this quite seriously because I cannot evade Miss Roulard. So, Lanny, it's such a pleasure to have you back. You visited us a while ago. We talked about a paper that you had written, an article, and that's kind of where we're going to start this off with, guys. This is going to be such a mind-blowing story. It's going to be a two-parter because there's no way we would get this into one story. So we're going to start with Lanny, the defender of the faith and freedom. As people ask me all the time, this is what I mentioned to Lanny pre-show. People ask me all the time, where are the lawyers? Why are no lawyers fighting any of this? Well, the reality is, Lanny, you were a property and tax lawyer that got drawn into the fight, and it has literally taken over your world.
Yes.
And let's start with that. For anybody that's been under a rock, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Wayne. This is an important story to share. And you know what? I can probably speak for the majority of Canadian lawyers, because we weren't constitutional lawyers when everything started 3 years ago. The lawyers that perhaps were government employees. I mean, there wasn't a lot of it. So we've had to educate ourselves, but there's a lot of us even, there's lawyers that have picked up microphones. There's lawyers who have picked up, the textbooks and gone into different areas of law. But actually, it's all towards the same vision, which is preserving your oath as a lawyer. And that's to uphold the rule of law. That's what this is all about. So.
And that is a great segue into the inverted law paper that you first brought you on my show, because now for people that are out there, I've been trying to follow this case and this story, but it's so overwhelming. It is so huge. The levels, the debauchery, that's the only way I can describe it, that the government or the establishment, I wouldn't even call it the government, the establishment in Alberta has gone to attack and assault a bookstore and coffee shop owner is beyond the pale. People have been familiar with stories about restaurants and this kind of stuff across the country, but most of those have subsided. The cases were dismissed, a lot
Mhm.
of kinds of things, but that's not the case in Alberta. And you've been fighting this case against like 15 law firms,
No,
almost.
oh no. It feels that way though. It really does. It really does. But you know what? This comes down to a concept. And you're kind of asking me a little bit before the show, where did the concept come from? You know what? The first time this concept was presented, it was on the stage at the Whistle Stop. And it was something that started kind of on a napkin when you look at the psychology as well as the law of what was happening. And so there is an article about this posted on the Lawyers for Truth website, but it's called Inverted Law. And that's kind of just the name that it was coined with. Now, what it means is that, you know, during the pandemic, the government actually flipped the law. They inverted it on us. And they said, okay, here's what your law is now, but we're not enforcing it, you are. So what happened was that they flipped the law, they come into your business, and if you didn't enforce that law, they would close you down. But the inversion here is that, first of all, you know, there was no ability for the people to go ahead and enforce this. And second of all, it would be a breach, you know, of the Constitution for Alberta to give that power to the people. But it would also be a breach of contract because A.H.S is its own company, Alberta Health Services. So they can't just take their contract with the government and start giving the power over to the people. So when you take a look at the CMOH orders, and I think you can do this across Canada, you don't have to restrict yourself to Alberta, ask yourself this, read the words. And it says, you must mask, you must distance yourself. So really, ironically, when you look at this and you take a look at the inverted law concept, they flipped the law. In this case, in the third hearing, they admitted that they knew the mandates were illegal, what was happening. It's a breach of privacy to ask people for their medical information, is it not? And then they said, you have to enforce this. But when you even pick up a CMOH order, you can see it tells you to put a mask on, but it doesn't say that you need to force Joe, your neighbor, to put a mask on, or whoever goes into your business to put a mask on. So there's two pieces. Yeah. Number one, it's inverted. Why are the people enforcing health regulations? And then number two, if they're illegal, well then okay. But why is it that they're trying to put the power on us when they really can't assign that power?
Well, this was something that, you know, when we first talked about this inverted law, that I think that was 2021, right? So
Yeah.
we're going back a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and your story, you've been watching this play out continuously, and that was the first time I'd heard anybody actually articulate, I think, what everybody was feeling. Why is it the guy at the cat, you know, at the clerk at the store that is enforcing the law when the government can't? You know, everything was Alice in Wonderland to everybody, but you identified that immediately out of the chute with this inverted law principle that was struck me so much. I got you on a show. Go back and look it up, folks. We'd spend an hour talking about this, and here we are 2 years later, where we're seeing that trajectory and where it's going, in the battle that it's been along the way, and the ups and downs. Somebody needs to make a movie about this story ultimately, because and this is where I'm so enamored with your story, because you've brought the mind, the critical mind, to the case as well. And I don't think anybody short of a psychologist and a lawyer combined with those two superpowers could have done that, because nobody else has been able to do that and articulate it in a public space.
Wow. But you know, it comes down to a really simple concept. Think about it. Okay. If you were a business, let's just take businesses. If you were a business who refused to break the law, then they would close you down illegally. So if you
Right.
refuse to breach Canadian law, they would punish you for it. So when you really sterilize it like that, you know, it becomes unquestionable. It's just so wrong. And we have an admission on the transcript in appeal number 3, like I had said, Central Region Director admitting that, yeah, you know, these were illegal, and there's liability associated with this, for the average Joe to do this. And if you take a look around, you'll see that there are businesses that paid damages for the employees that they laid off due to COVID. All of these things are coming to play. The human rights, they've taken that side of it as well. So every court we look at, it's been flipped, it's been inverted. And so if you're walking around in a haze and you're thinking, this doesn't make sense, that's not the law, you're probably right. But isn't that why those tickets are getting punted out of court as well? Right?
For the most part, yeah. And this was something that I'm not sure if we had talked about it during that our first discussion there. A leaked amendments to the concept or the courts or whatever it was in Australia that literally said that the employers would ultimately and bear the costs of all of these things and be the ones held liable at the end of the day once all was said and done. Now that's completely disappeared, just like everything else that is real and gets leaked seems to get buried under another mudstorm. But this is exactly where we are seeing where now the people are starting to realize that it's been a giant psyop, and they literally turned innocent people into the criminals through a lack of through forced compliance. And that is something I think that is genuinely giving you an edge in your fight, is understanding the psyche behind all of this, in seeing it and being able to identify it and defend your client even more appropriately. And in my opinion, the only reason that Stacy's case is still ongoing is because you've got the goods on them. If they could have dismissed it and gotten rid of you guys, I think that they probably would have.
We
Am
have to
I
wonder,
crazy thinking so?
Yeah, no, I've never, as a lawyer, had a case before where it's kind of like, you lost, you're terrible, you just got costs ordered against you, and now we're coming after you with more applications to try to get your other 2 applications out of court. And that's what's happening right now. So we're actually, and initially I thought it was 3 attempts, but we're actually right now on our 4th attempt to get judicial reviews number 2 and 3 struck. And so they've tried for mootness. They denied Stacey the ability to represent her corporation. Yet at the same time, they took her corporate records and walked them over to the Crown and tried to prosecute her personally. So the crisscross between the hallways is stunning. It really is. I've never seen anything like it. But it's funny because for as weak as they say the case is, there's 4 lawyers that are government paid, of course. And also the Public Health Appeal Board applied and was successful and also got $675 in costs to join as a respondent. So to put that in perspective for the viewing audience, let's just say that Wayne, I'm like, you know what? You owe me $20,000. So I go and I sue you and I take you to court, and the judge looks at me and says, well, he doesn't really owe you that money. And I said, what? And the judge dismisses my case. So I'm upset. So now I said, Wayne, I'm going to appeal this case. I'm going to go to the Court of Appeal. And the judge gets upset and says, well, you don't agree with my judgment. I'm going to be a defendant in that appeal as well. So now it's me and Wayne. So this is kind of what we're looking at, because the Public Health Appeal Board is the board who hears your grievances and is supposed to review closure orders in Alberta, like from Alberta Health Services. But at the same time, you go to the Public Health Appeal Board and you have to appeal there, and it takes forever. They're going to dismiss you. And then what happens is, even if they don't dismiss you, you're going to spend months. And what are you supposed to do as a small business? Because you can't just close down, right? We have a million stories that go into this because A.H.S will set you up in so many different ways, but that's the complexity of this case. So
what I'm hearing, and this is just the swamp donkey and me breaking it down so that I can digest it and know that I'm correct, is that in the real world, we'd call this cronyism, engaging in lawfare to punish your client because she refused to break the law.
Exactly. But not only that, there's no system of checks and balances. So if you have nobody reviewing your conduct, like let's put it this way, Alberta Health Services does an inspection. Okay, they come into your place of work and they do an inspection. They immediately go and post that online. It's public. That's what the prejudicial information was, and that's how we got over the mootness argument that has been thrown out there so commonly, because they immediately put this information online. Inaccurate, accurate, doesn't matter. You are guilty until proving yourself innocent. Now, to prove yourself innocent, you really, if I take this case, for example, you have to have the ability to endure over 30 inspections, 6 orders, most of them closures and suspensions, okay? 3 public hearings, like the Public Health Appeal Board hearings, 3 judicial reviews, and 4 court applications for dismissal. And one of them would have been successful had she not gotten me, had Stacey and their family not been able to have me as their pro bono lawyer, because the courts would not allow Stacey to represent her corporation. So when you think about this and take a step back, do we really have access to justice? Now think of the moment that inspection, whatever it's going to say, is placed online. That is a detriment to your business. They have an inspection report that was just posted, and they were criticized for having their lunches in the refrigerator with the milk they put in the coffee.
That was an offense.
Yeah. So the thing is that if they want to close you, they're going to close you. Right? And this is the point that I have the issue with here, with the system and with the laws, because if you can't get this reviewed by the courts, that means that A.H.S literally, just like we saw in COVID, has the power to unilaterally create and enforce their own version of law without any oversight.
So they've given themselves the authority to write the rules as they go and enforce them as willy-nilly as they choose.
Any way they choose. Now, I'll give you an example, because you got to have the details to fill this in. So you know what I'm going to do.
There's a part that I want to touch on there before we get away from it, though, and this is a huge misconception. People think in Canada we are innocent until proven guilty.
No.
We are not, folks.
Not anymore.
We are guilty until proven innocent in Canada. And this is why lawfare is so effective and such a powerful political weapon leveraged across this country. Stacey's not alone. Stacey is just, you guys refused to capitulate. But that is a huge misconception that Canadians have watched way too much US TV, and this is how they get us.
Yeah. Well, and if it's not, let's say that you're a person who has the confidence to get up in a courtroom, okay? And maybe you have a few academic skills you can put together and actually get the documents drafted, get some help with it, okay? You still have to have your resources, right? The way
Look
that
what they're doing to Randy Hillier. Look what they're doing. They're doing the same thing to Randy Hillier right now. When it came to time for my case, they refused. They kicked me out of the Zoom and refused to allow me to watch my own case. Why? Because I was a journalist. That was the only justification that the judge gave my lawyer, was that they shut down the entire proceedings, the entire Zoom proceedings, because I was a journalist. Even though I was one of the defendants in there, they shut it down. I still don't know what the heck is going on.
Yep. That's, we had a 3-day hearing. The first appeal was 3 days. We got our disclosure on the 2nd day of the hearing. I had it for the 3rd day. That was it. And then they wouldn't let us re-examine Stacey, of course. And we're trying to push forward and get this disclosure because their business is closed. So here's the catch-22, though. This is what keeps you in the racket. And I have to break this all down for you, probably in the right order. But what keeps you in the racket is that they put the closure order against you, and then you go and you appeal it, and they'll withdraw the enforcement, and they'll call it moot. And then they'll do it all over again, right? So what they'll do is, and I'll give you a classic scenario, because this is going to flip some heads, is that they took the corporate inspection records of Alberta Health Services. These 2 inspectors took these records over to the Crown to prosecute Stacey personally. Okay? Yes, there's privacy laws. And then not only that, if they came back in the same two inspectors, there were 39 other inspectors in the region. They refused to send an alternate inspector, of course. And these two inspectors doing all of it were the primary witnesses, evidence gatherers, inspectors, everything.
The loyal sycophants, the good soldiers.
So, and then what happens is that it basically escalates to the point where they tell her she's not entitled to have legal counsel present. And let's not forget that they're prosecuting her now with quasi-criminal charges, fines of $10,000 to $100,000. They're telling her she has to subject herself to an inspection with these two inspectors anytime so they can gather up evidence.
And she's not allowed a lawyer.
And she's not permitted a lawyer because that would take away the element of surprise. However, they are very fair with themselves and they were permitted their own lawyer if they were meeting.
At our
Like, so
expense,
if I
of
was
course.
there having a cup of coffee and they came in to inspect, they're allowed to run for the hills because there's a lawyer there. So, you know, you got to look at this and the breakdown. I mean, the first disturbing thing is the whole fact that they walked over these inspection reports and they only got that information by virtue of the food permit that this company held. And yet they used that information against the owner personally. And not only that, the only other evidence they had, because those inspection reports didn't even reference the owner personally, the only other information they had was a written statement by one of the inspectors that was unsigned and undated. But we knew who wrote it. That was it. So now they can gain access to your life through your business and prosecute you criminally, quasi-criminally in this case. That,
On a personal level for
yeah,
whatever they decide on a business level,
right,
whether it's relevant, legal, moot.
right.
This is beyond
It's
comprehension for
terrifying.
most people. It is absolutely
Yeah.
terrifying. I want to back up a little bit here
Mhm.
to set a little bit more of the foundation. And initially, guys, we were going to have Stacy and everybody and her daughter on here as well, but I think that it's going to serve us all better because there's a purpose to this tonight. There's a case coming up, the hearing coming up on the 11th, and we need as many people to get involved and let the government and the courts and the A.H.S know that we know what they're doing and this is wrong. It's wrong, and we have an opportunity to make a very loud statement. So this is kind of a bit of a time sensitive story. So for those that are out there watching, last second, I just decided that we needed to do this better. And in order to do that, we're going to come back on Thursday. Lanny's going to set up all of the legalities, all of the insanity, and then on Thursday we're going to hear from Stacy in her own words a lot of all of this. And in the meantime, here's what I'm going to be doing. I've offered my help to these guys because they stand the potential of being stuck with all of these costs, and that's just not right. And there is no way that Stacy would be able to bear that burden, and I'm pledging all of the support I can and anybody in our community that will be able to help in that regard. So after tonight's show, I'm going to get busy doing that. We're going to hear the rest of the story from Stacy and her daughter on Thursday, but for right now, how did you and Stacy get connected? You're a real estate attorney. She's a coffee shop bookstore owner, right? I mean, I somehow don't imagine you guys were the best of friends traveling in, daily circles together. How does Lanny the lawyer end up in the fight of her life with somebody else and become, to me and others out there, such a huge inspiration? Because you didn't ask for this, nobody
No,
did, but yeah, how did this happen? How did you get together?
it's so simple because it was just wrong. It was
Yeah.
wrong what was
So had
happening.
you heard about the so
No,
you're obviously you guys live in the same
Stacey reached
community or
out to
close?
me. And well, you know, I was a little lonely and I joined Lawyers for Truth. And you know, and I started to do some work because I had to wonder about humanity. I had to wonder what was going on. Because I think it's one thing for our government, you know, large corporations to tell us to do something that we know is wrong. But I think it's an entirely different thing for us to choose to do it ourselves. And this is the point that I'm at right now. So I've taken this case and tried to use it as a mirror to put in front of people's faces and say, we need to do a reality check on our own humanity here. And I'm not exempting myself from this conversation at all. You know, I'm just saying that we are now the ones who are driving the ball. And as part of this speech I put together, I'll tell it to you this way, Wayne. Okay. First of all, they walked into your business and they said, would you put a mask on somebody, even if it might make them sick? And you said, yeah. And then they came in and they said, well, would you force somebody to take a medication, even if it might make them die? And they said, sure. But now what's happening, and I need to point this out so hopefully we can all come together and deal with this. But now they're having people come to work, and you might be one of these people where you sit there at your desk and head office is telling you to do this. And you may not agree. You may know that this is morally wrong, but this is where we have to draw the line. Because when you ask yourself, if there's going to be bank managers who are going to stand at the front of the bank and lie about your trust checks being NSF when they're not, they are having a big hand in shaping your community. And I will tell each one, every person who is doing what head office is telling them to do, that they are shaping the community, because in 5 years, that will be what they see outside. Because this is literally what's happening. It's coming from the government, the banks, and you know, the big corporations, right?
Well, so to lead into that, as I mentioned earlier, you know, Lanny and I have known each other for a long time, and I've tried to follow this story. It was it's just so immense. But uh, was last week I get an email from you, Lanny, and about this speech that had kind of turned things upside down again, to the point where people are slipping Danielle Smith's number to you and trying to get this message of this speech out. And this was so significant that and this was one of the reasons why this turned into a two-part show, guys, is because this speech that you gave, I'm not sure the date, but we're going to hear about this because it is so profound. And afterwards, I've got permission. I'll publish this speech, and you guys can fire it at will. I know that one of the fellows from Alberta, Mr. Shane Getson's going to get it in his email directly, personally from me. Why? Because I know he listens to me. He actually admitted it. You know, things happen, right? So
Yep.
that's, you know, this was a one of those watershed moments. I think is the term for it. 3 years into this, you guys have been rock solid in all of this. You guys have paid an immense price, a massive price. We can't go into it; it's far too personal, and I wouldn't put that on you. But this has cost you, regardless, anything that you guys have ever would have imagined, both of you guys moving forward on this. And I want to say that I'm pretty excited that to see that Staceys Happy Place is still on Facebook, guys. So go and find her and follow her there. I'll try and pull up a link here once Lana gets going on this. But this is what I wanted people to hear, was this speech, because it is so relevant, so pertinent, so now. And we've only got a couple of days until the 11th, and we need to build up some momentum for Stacey and what's right. So tell us a little bit, lead into this, what you were thinking. And I'm pretty sure, knowing you, Lanny, what you actually did was entirely different than what you were thinking 10 minutes before you did it, but you did it anyways. Uh, uh, tell us about it.
So tell you about, I'm sorry, about the speech.
Yeah,
About,
the speech. Where did it come from? And then
yeah.
and then
Well,
give us the speech.
yeah, you know, this took 3 years to arrive at this, and I always have to say it's not my story because I never lived it. I've just watched it unfold through the eyes of a family who's just like any other family in Alberta. And this family lives in Eckville, Alberta, and they own Staceys Happy Place. And what's happened there is that we found that hundreds of thousands of dollars have been spent by the government trying to close this business. And there's no question. We've seen many businesses go before them and after them, but fortunately, they have been able to stay there and to inspire really the Eckville downtown core, I believe, to stay, keep their grid. They've got A.H.S officers coming there all the time. I gave this speech 2 weeks ago, Sunday, and by Tuesday, the police were there with A.H.S again. So this is how it happens. So, this was a natural progression.
So they're still they're still unrelenting in daily intimidation.
It is still happening. Think about this. I don't understand the logic. They get critiqued for having their lunch in the same fridge they have the milk in that they put in the coffee, but yet there's no regard for the safety of the employees or the family, so their lunch doesn't spoil. Like, it's gotten to this extent where the government is interfering so much that this family and a lot of small businesses, I'm speaking for a lot, cannot earn a living because they're just mired in all of these government enforcement processes, as well as administrative processes and empty fees. And I can't help but stand back and say, is that not communism? It's what it looks like if you're running. Basically, you're playing Mother May I to keep your business open, right? Like, I have a list here. I just got to, and I went through it earlier with you, but think about that. The 6 A.H.S orders, 30 inspections, 3 public health appeals, 3 judicial reviews, 4 court applications to dismiss, and quasi-criminal charges against the owner. How many hundreds of thousands do you figure that is?
Because the sandwich is beside the milk that people put in their
Yeah.
coffee.
And that's not, like that's the minor stuff, right? This is the stuff that they do now since all of the COVID measures are gone, right? So it's just been, and the A.H.S, though, I got to go through this if I can. Do you want me to present the speech, though? Because I can do it all in context here, because I am breaking things up here. But the thing is, we've already got a good intro into this, because really this case is about the 2 things, and it's the inverted law. And the first thing is that we never had, like, the biggest takeaway really is that they knew that these mandates were illegal, and they got the people to enforce them for them. Okay, that's the big one. The second one is just that these enforcement measures, the people never had the authority to carry them through. So the government never gave us that authority, and I believe that they are aware of that. So when you take a step back and say, hey, I wasn't really authorized to do this, you start to understand a pattern starts to form, and you start to realize this case is not just about this coffee shop in Eckville. It's not just about Stacy's family. This is about a significant institutional shift. And this is where subjective belief or assertion of a government agent is literally going to determine whether or not you are in contravention of the law, not the laws themselves. And
so the Stasi walks in the door, says, "I don't like the look of you," and you're done.
Yeah. And I'll give you an example of that, within the context of the speech. But is this not totalitarianism, right? When the law is defined by the beliefs of the government authority, not objectively defined by the laws. So if Canadians are competing with the subjective belief of government officials, we're in trouble here. We're in a lot of trouble, because we're not following the rule of law. We're following political opinions and subjective beliefs. That is what creates the divisiveness right there. So the examples, if I'm going to present some of the pieces of the speech. We'll just do it through conversation as well. But I have to wow the audience, because to understand the context of what happened to this family, and that's why I always have to approach this with respect, because I may be sitting in this seat reacting to what happened to them, but they were the ones that had the lightning bolt of emotion go through them. They're the ones that experienced this firsthand. So remember that when I tell you these things, because it's just amazing what happened. But I'll just give you kind of a list. I'll just go into a discussion here, Wayne, if that's okay. But for the past 3 years, basically, A.H.S. at one point served a closure order, and had deliberately removed the notification of the family's right to appeal. So that was one of the things that happened. A lawyer knows that's unacceptable. That's not something you can do. Okay. But that's in the shallow end of the pool here. Complaints were unverified and incapable of being sent through the A.H.S electronic portal because they said they were getting complaints. And they were missing way too much information, material information, contact information. I actually tried to put them through. They wouldn't go through. There were more than 30 inspections, but those complaints justified all of that and all of their orders and closures. 10 complaints in total were alleged, but only one was verified. The one that was verified was a provincial employee hired by the provincial government when the pandemic started to report problems with businesses in COVID-19. So, of course, that individual would contact A.H.S, and then they would come in and inspect. Most of the inspections, I love this one, most of the inspections were conducted from outside the business and included allegations of spies coming and going from the business. And these spies were actually family members coming and going. And for example, one of the daughters worked at the Chinese restaurant across the street and would have a hoodie on and a cell phone, and they labeled her a spy as she went back and forth to her shifts. So they altered the inspection reports to include additional offenses that were submitted as evidence for the appeal hearings. So we have 2 sets of inspection reports in front of the court. Some of the offenses didn't even apply to the business because they kept getting confused, and they're still confused. This business does not sell solid food. So at one point they did sell bags of chips, but no, they don't sell solid food. They don't have raw meat there. They just sell coffee and used books and retail gifts in Eckville, Alberta. I think the population is about 1,200. So
I
just so
know
that
that,
you know,
Phil.
we're talking, yeah, it's a small town, right? A beautiful town, but small. So the family, now it gets better. The family was subjected to unlawful search and seizure. Okay. One night they were at the store, the whole family, and the police came in with A.H.S. And it was half an hour before their first appeal hearing. I wasn't their lawyer at that point. They demanded their cash register receipts, and the police threatened the entire family, including their 16-year-old daughter at the time who didn't even work there, with arrest. So, and they took those receipts. They used them against them at the appeal hearing. And the chair of the Public Health Appeal Board refused to disregard them, even though they were taken without a warrant. So it's hard to believe when I'm telling you this. I realize it's hard to believe this is a coffee and used bookstore, right? But then what they did, like I told you, they took the inspection records and they went over to the provincial crown with that. And they started to prosecute Stacey personally. The fines were $10,000 to $100,000. She did go to court in an attempt to speak to those claims. And I went in as well. I'm not a criminal lawyer, so I wasn't able to act. And I tried to represent her in court. But what happened was they refused to let her in because she didn't have a mask and she didn't have an exemption, although I brought all her medications in because she didn't have that exemption. So I thought I could prove the exemption. But they were interested in considering that. So they adjourned court a week and then they issued a warrant and they arrested her. They released her. Yep. And just to take that all the way to the end, I'd already told you that the only evidence they had were the inspection reports that belonged to the company through the food permit is how they got that information. And then a written statement by one of the inspectors. Okay, that's all they had. So basically 4 days before the trial was supposed to be heard, after going through almost 2 years of this, because the process is the punishment, this trial was withdrawn because they didn't have enough evidence. So 2 years for that. Yeah. Yeah. So
That's such a nice way to dismiss the fact that, I just committed 10 crimes against you, but you're okay. We'll just let you go. We won't pay attention. Nothing to see here, folks. Yeah, we'll just carry on there.
No repercussion there.
And send in a different platoon of goons.
Well, you know what? Same two inspectors all the time. But the story gets better. So it escalated to the point, and this was probably the horrific escalation, when the inspectors came to this business a couple times in the day. They had an A.H.S plainclothes spy come in as well, who stood there in the corner and just took pictures of Stacy's young daughters. Didn't say a word. I mean, how intimidating is that in your business, right? And then it was Thanksgiving. They had closed for the afternoon, and A.H.S came in, these two inspectors again, and refused to physically leave. So this was the night that it pretty much broke loose, because A.H.S said that trespass laws didn't apply to them. But not only that, the reason that this was all happening, and they were demanding in-person meetings and inspections all the time with just these two inspectors, was because they had those quasi-criminal charges against Stacey. They didn't have any evidence, and they needed to gather it. I mean, it's pretty clear.
And they call us conspiracy theorists. I mean, at least my conspiracy theories don't come with $1 million bill given to the taxpayer, because that's in essence what these guys are doing. They're screaming a conspiracy without any evidence and persecuting, making it up as they go. Why wouldn't it have been easier for them to just slip a bag of Coke in her pocket and lock her up? Like, I mean, not to be
Don't give
callous
them
about this,
ideas,
but it's the same idea.
No. But here's the thing, it's a pattern. So I always tell people,
Right.
whether they're looking at the medical system or they're looking at the small business situation, because I've worked in both, look for the pattern. Always look for the pattern. And here what it was they took these corporate inspection records, brought them to the Crown, got some charges trumped up, and served on her. Okay. That is a punishment in itself. How would you feel as an individual trying to run your business? Okay. We've all heard the case of the whistle stop, all the different owners and what they've gone through. Okay. So they do that. But then what happens is, if you don't allow them in at any time while these criminal proceedings are going on and let them inspect, they will threaten you and close you for obstruction. But there's something even better. They do it without applying to the courts, as they are required to do under the Public Health Act. So this is what I mean about government organizations unilaterally creating their own system of laws and then basically wiping the slate clean for accountability before it ever gets reviewed by a court.
Wow.
It's terrifying. And I keep saying the same word over and over, because when you look at the case and when you look at the facts and you hear the stories, you're like, yeah, that's bad. And some people can maybe try to justify that and say, well, come on, just cooperate a little, but it's not about that. This is about, what is our rule of law in our country? And what is the system of oversight over these government officials who say they are following the law, but truly aren't? I mean, if you can't get into court, if you go to court with this, you get slammed down in your public health appeals, right? And you apply, they're going to say, after your company has been financially destroyed, they're going to say to you, well, I'm sorry, but you can't represent yourself in court. So that was the first thing she had to overcome. So then she got pro bono lawyer here. Okay. But then the next thing was, no, you missed your limitation period, which means you didn't sue in time. Our lawsuit took over a year to file, because it took over a year for the Public Health Appeal Board to give us their decision in writing and explain why they decided the way they did. So not only are you tacking on several months trying to get in front of the Public Health Appeal Board, but then you get in front of them and they might think you're moot, because maybe in the background, A.H.S has withdrawn all the enforcement. So we have a case, and this is judicial review number 2, where the chair from the Public Health Appeal Board interprets a sentence to be an application, a whole A.H.S, directs A.H.S to write it up properly, and then, of course, grants it. We've got situations where we've done full-on questioning of Stacey, A.H.S has, and then I get to the point where I'm going to question the A.H.S inspectors, and they put down all these restrictions. They forced me to write a statement of facts. Or, oh, this is a good one. Or I get told to hold my tongue and screamed at by one of the board members who's a federal prosecutor. And the thing is, then the next weekend, I'm sent a job offer. This is all in front of the court. This is why we need these
They
cases.
offered you a job.
They, yeah, sent me a job posting through LinkedIn, and I don't go on LinkedIn, so I'm not really a social media person. But I mean, this thing has more hooks and valleys than you'd ever know. But it makes you feel like you felt the last 3 years. It kind of explains a lot, because you know what, people, you're not crazy, and that's not the law. And that this is my problem, because as a lawyer and an officer of the court, I can't bring disrepute to the court, and I take that very seriously. But that's why I'm doing this, because when I took my oath to uphold the rule of law, this is what it meant to me, was that if I see the law being broken and I see people either being discriminated against or damaged or harmed by this, I believe I have an obligation to bring that case forward. So,
Well, wow. This, so I did a roundtable town hall with Shane Getson a couple of days ago, and one of the topics of discussion that he was addressing was questions because it by appearances Danielle Smith does seem to be detonating this rogue corporation, because that is the only way to describe it. Alberta Healthcare it is not a government institution. It is not an institution of the people. It is a corporation that has, as you so clearly demonstrated here, gone completely, utterly rogue with no respect of privacy law, rights, or any constitutional law whatsoever. But yet the courts are upholding that.
so far, the first judicial review is dismissed. Yep. So the mootness argument, they lost on that. So they've lost on 3 out of 4 of their applications to dismiss. But now A.H.S, the first hearing, they gave them, the Public Health Appeal Board got $675 because we defended and tried to prevent them from being a respondent to our applications, because that doubles the briefs and the parties that I have to respond to is pro bono. So now we've got pretty much a cycle of 4 government lawyers working on this case, and I'm going up against, and this family is going up against Alberta Health Services and the Public Health Appeal Board. So the number of lawyers, the amount of money, the enforcement, the processes they've gone through, yet they won't make an application for obstruction as they're required to do under the Public Health Act to close a business legitimately. Doesn't that make you wonder?
I mean, across the board, we see these people doubling down on stupidity at only our expense, repeatedly. And this is the unfortunate part of this is now Stacy and the family has had no pause in this. COVID and the restrictions have never gone away. The punishment has been ongoing. They have literally been living in an open air prison instituted by A.H.S and backed up so far by the courts. If this again is not this the justification that the whole country needs to see and hear this and understand that their provinces, all of the catastrophes that are happening to people across this country, it's the same thing. It's a rogue corporation. And this is why you keep showing the flaws, the breakdowns in this. Why this is why I believe fully why they are so intent on keeping you guys silenced. And on the other side of it, initially on, you guys didn't look for any public support. You guys weren't in the news about this kind of thing. I genuinely think that is probably why you guys have been able to do so much damage and expose so many of their flaws in repetition. Because if they would have been, if they had done a half of this and it would have been in the public space, they would have been overwhelmed with public outcry. And you wouldn't have been able to expose so many of additional layers to this corruption. You guys have now, in my opinion, Stacy's got a Covington kid style case that the government has spent $1 million probably plus persecuting. And is now going to try to get the money out of Stacy to cover their costs on this, while they were the ones being the criminals all along. This they are at the point where they are pot committed. They
Yeah.
cannot back away from you guys and this case at this point, and this is why this show is so critical for the people of Alberta to know and understand. This is your opportunity to drive the nail in the coffin of this corrupt organization and take the heat off of the government. It is trying to do it because Danielle Smith and the government, I do genuinely believe, is trying to take apart this particular syndicate, but they're getting a lot of flack from that as well, because I don't think people fully understand how corrupt this agency is that they are trying to protect. Alberta Health Services has absolutely not a soul's health in mind in any of their actions. And this, I'm getting a little triggered here by but there's a comment here. You're absolutely right. The corruption is bottomless. It
It
seems to
is.
be in
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. It's disconcerting though. I mean, the behavior, and this is what I have to appeal to. I have to bring you back to the humanity piece because that's who I am. You know, because we have to stop this within ourselves. We all remember it. Like, we have the recordings, we have evidence here. People were told to break the law. And so, where we're heading now, I want to talk a little bit about solutions too. Where we're heading now is we have to take personal responsibility, right? Like, personally, I am done swimming in this mess. I don't know about you, Wayne, but I'm done. And the only way that I can see out of this is the public to become informed, educated, and start to get involved in this. And so at the end of this speech, where I go to is, okay, what are we going to do here? And going back to this court application, I'll just kind of lay out what we have ahead of us here. So we're on our fourth application. It goes to court on December the 11th. And this is the fourth application to dismiss these judicial reviews. There were 3 in total. Okay. So the application itself, they're saying that because there were costs ordered for the first judicial review, even though a justice has set these down separately because they're all distinct, they're saying that, oh no, you have to now pay those costs and post security for costs. And the argument is that the cost for each hearing is $13,500. So A.H.S was awarded $33.75 in the first hearing, but they've tripled that because they've offered to withdraw everything, just go home, people, and saying you can get more costs that way if you make a better offer and you decide, okay, we're going to go off the path and we're not going to go to court. But they're also doubling the cost because of the gravity of our allegations. And so in our affidavit, defending there, Stacey is saying basically, okay, well, here's all the facts because that's why I said it. So, we've got to get this out. I have to be honest. I don't expect to win this, but if people could bring accountability and bring that into the system again and start paying attention, I think we will start winning these again. Because I have to believe that there's a good human core out there and we can get back to the rule of law. That's what the rule of law was built on.
At the end of the day, the highest jurisdiction in any country is the court of public opinion.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, that's the only thing that will take down a tyrant. It doesn't matter what country or part of history you look at. It's the court of public opinion that makes the change. And that's, again, coming back to why this is, again, so important is the timing of this here now. And you guys have an opportunity, and it's sad to me that you, one of the most optimistic people I know, this fight has never, kept you down, can say that you genuinely don't expect to win this, but that's only because there is no justice in the justice system. There is no law in the justice system at this point in time that makes this possible, that you would be in that situation feeling like you don't have a chance to win this. They cannot let you win this. Justice doesn't matter. Just like the rest of the situation, justice doesn't matter. They cannot let you win. It's the same thing they have tried to do to everybody that had the fortitude to withstand the first few salvos. You become a how dare you? You must be punished.
Mhm.
And that's I think where you guys are at with the or where the government is at with you guys. No common sense, reason, law is going to placate them, because it's nothing to do with any of that. So, in their opinion, I think that this, as you assume, is a foregone decision by the courts. But I don't think it is. I
We're
don't
hoping.
think it is.
We're hoping. So we're going to present it because it needs to be heard. It needs to be heard. It's that important, you know?
It needs to be heard, and it
Mhm.
needs to be heard at that time by
Mhm.
not an empty square inch of that space.
That's it. Fill up your town halls, fill up your courthouses. I always go back because I grew up in a small mining town, right? And we had this mayor and he had a bad temper. But you know what? That mayor had to keep his temper in check because he had a whole room full of town people who would scorn him and judge him if he lost his temper. We need to start doing this again where it's like, you know what, if I go to work and I don't do a good job, or some, like, there's going to be accountability, and I think that speaks a lot to our town meetings. And I'll say too, hey, if I was on a council and nobody ever showed up or asked me what I was doing, I'd probably be a little lonely, maybe a little bitter. We have to show up. But I have a third suggestion too, because this is big, and Stacey did a wonderful job. She brought this case out in a previous interview as well, and we were talking about standing in your truth, and this is kind of a term that it's a phrase that I think of all the time to give me strength, because there was this time during COVID, like I'm a severe asthmatic, and there was a time where I went into my doctor's office, and the asthmatics, we had to go all the time because they were changing our notes apparently and things like that. And I went to go get a prescription, and again, they were put a mask on, right? I can't wear a mask. I have asthma. And that day was different because instead of like bylaw or the police are just saying you don't get medical service today, and yes, people, that happened all the time. 4 months I couldn't go anywhere. Maybe that's why this story was impactful to me. But after that happening, what happened that day that was different was that three people in the waiting room stood up behind me. They were like, why are you trying to put a mask on an asthmatic? Is that assault? Do you think the doctor would agree with that? Is that right thing to do? And this is what I believe we as people have to start doing, is we have to start standing our truth. So I'm telling you right now that what those people did for me that day changed my life. And it was probably the first time I was hauled out of somewhere with threats of bylaw and everything else, trying to get my inhalers. But I'm going to stand in my truth. And I'm not talking about violence. I'm not talking about being a nuisance. I'm just talking about, for all those people who are going to work and saying head office told me to do this, please stand in your truth, because if you're not willing to cross your moral line, it's not going to happen today, right? It's up to us. So that's what I mean about this personal accountability and filling up those rooms again, because we've done it to ourselves in some senses here, right? Like there
100%.
has to be,
100%.
yeah.
We've been for generations, unfortunately, been trapped in this satanic lullaby where life was too good. We didn't have to fight for anything. We could just ignore it, and it didn't affect our lives. When we've gone far beyond there, and unfortunately, those fight for our life instincts have been drastically diminished through this isolation and perpetuity of psychological abuse waged upon the population. And that's why it's so important for us to share and become a part of this story. This isn't just a story for the audience to digest and communicate. This is a story for you to take part in. This
For
is a story
everyone.
that changes
Mhm.
history. This is a story that makes the difference. I was reading today going, oh my goodness, God bless Albertans, by seeing Daniel Smith actually firing a city council. Why did that happen? Because you demanded it. You
Yeah.
wouldn't back down. You filled those spaces and would not be silenced. That
Mhm.
is again how we win.
Yeah.
Really profound quote that has just been stuck in my brain all day today, and I'm going to read this for the people out there. Disobedience is the true foundation of liberty. The obedient must be the slaves. Henry David Thoreau. And that is exactly where we are. It doesn't have to be violent and bloody. It doesn't have to be like that. But it will be if we don't fill those spaces right now. On the 11th, go fill that courthouse. Support the community. Support Stacy. Stacy's been standing since the beginning. This is where the community involvement. That is the responsibility that we have to take, is supporting our own communities when they have the fortitude to do what's right, not what's easy, to give up, to not swallow that virtue signaling while doing evil of these corporations, and demand an end to it. There's so many different things that I could say to that, but this is Alberta's time. This is your guys' time. This is our country's time. I believe it's the world's time. That's a whole other discussion. But I think that we are there, and there is an
Yep.
absolute appetite for this. People, don't be afraid. Go
Yep.
out there. You will get results when enough of you are showing that responsibility, because that is exactly our responsibility.
It is. It is. And, so many people have said, well, how does this apply to me? I got to give you two examples because we were talking about this earlier. I want to show you the shift in law. So imagine you got a trucker and he's driving down the highway, okay? And he's going down the highway at about 80 clicks. It's say 6 a.m., clear, sunny, and it's minus 29. You got a police officer in a cruiser parked by the side who swears up and down he saw a cell phone in the trucker's hand, but also saw the headphones on the trucker's head. So you got a police officer by the side of the road who swears he saw a cell phone in a trucker's cab in seconds. He flashed
Yeah,
by him at
cut
80
there.
clicks. Okay. $650 ticket. You going to be successful? It's a he said, she said. No, you're not going to be successful.
Never.
So now take another situation. Okay. This is the town where I live in. And this is a big one. I was threatened during an election. I went to town hall to speak about this bylaw, and the police were there waiting for me. And they told me they were going to physically remove me from town hall if I talked about this bylaw. And what this bylaw is, and every municipality is coming down with the same affliction, is I'm going to give you an example, okay? So I got a white dog with a pink collar, and you live beside me, Wayne, and you got a white dog with a purple collar, okay? So you get a ticket because what happens is I parked beside my curb one night. My white dog with a pink collar jumps out, hits the pavement, no leash, picture snapped. These are all real. Jumps and goes in my house. You come over and you got your ticket with the pink collar, and you're like, Lonnie, this is your dog. I'm like, Wayne, you just got bad luck, man. You go down to town hall and you're mad. Okay, you're mad. And you say to them, this is not my dog. You know that Roulard. She's going to do this every time. She's a lawyer. And they look at you and they flip over the ticket and they point to the $150 non-refundable administrative fee you have to pay to appeal it to the CAO. So, do you want to pay the $80 ticket or do you want to pay the $150 appeal fee that's non-refundable? You
Well,
see,
it,
this is the quagmire. This is it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to, what is it now? If you want to challenge a traffic infraction, you have to
Yeah.
prepay $1,000 to the courts in Alberta in order to have the right to fight your
Yeah.
ticket.
So let's take a look at this, right? Because in the one case, you got the trucker, right? And I guess you got an enforcement person, and it's a he said, she said, where the he said whatever is always going to win. And it's going to cost you $650 on somebody's word if you want to go to work today. Okay. And then you got the other side of the street where even if they're wrong, they're going to make money out of it. And they're controlling the whole system they're making the money from. So
Yeah.
when you see the system of law being converted that way to serve a purpose related to the money, you got to start questioning it because you're right into the communist approach.
And then and then if you do try to speak for truth, the price doubles, and if you try again, the price doubles again.
Yeah.
This is why what they are so adamant about, making Stacy the guilty party in all of this, to show people, to prove to them, no matter how far you take this, no matter how much you fight for your rights, you will get crushed. There is no
Yeah.
victory.
Yeah. It's tough though, because you know how you're in the playground and the teacher comes around the corner and you're just defending yourself because the bully just finished, kicking you on the ground, but you're now taking a smack back and you're the one taking all the heat for it. That's what it looks
Yeah.
like. The bully calls you the bully, you know?
Yeah, I think that they've taken the one of the rules of hockey a little bit too far. They used to call that retaliation. How dare you retaliate? I don't care if he hit you in the teeth with his hockey stick first. You're not allowed to hit him back.
Yeah.
That's when fights happen.
Yeah. The first hit's okay, but not the second. It totally makes sense. Totally. But that's all inverted, right? So what's right
Yeah.
is wrong. And this is what's so confusing, because not only is this an inversion of our law, but it's a psychological nightmare for people.
Mhm.
How many times have you asked yourself, am I crazy? Am I unreasonable? Am I doing something wrong here? But it's really, the law's been inverted, and you're being told that what's right is wrong and what's wrong is right.
Oh, that's something that we've covered on this platform fairly extensively. The
Yeah.
amount of psychological abuse. If our relationship with our government was taken into the courts as a family case, boy, would there be a different set of outcomes given the behaviors demonstrated by our government as the abuser in this situation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, because they are self-anointed or not, the governing body of authority that nobody seems to want to question or has the ability to hold accountable, except perhaps, fingers crossed, Daniel Smith actually does implode them. That would set a precedent across the country. But until then, the only superseding authority with jurisdiction is the court of public opinion. So,
Yeah.
guys, this is jury duty. You need to be at the courthouse on the 11th. This isn't a protest or a rally. This is jury duty. You need to know how corrupt those courts are, and they need to look you in the eye when they are doing this.
Or we need to go to the courthouse, tell them we care about the integrity of our courts to ensure that they operate with integrity. So I have to believe that there's a higher purpose here. Yeah, I have to believe that, just with the rule of law.
This is. I mean, we're at probably one of the most interesting times in human history, and it is also, I believe, the most opportune time in human history to make a mark in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Or dent. We'll see how it
I'm
turns
not.
out.
If somebody knows my name down the road, I'll be happy for that. And if it made a difference in one person's life, then every bit of it was worth it. We've gone a little bit over our
Yeah.
time allotment here. So I want to just kind of tail this out a little bit to lead into Thursday. So once again, for everybody out there, we turned this into a two-part show, and on Thursday we're going to hear from the family in this particular story, and we're doing this intentionally so that this can have the opportunity to get across the province of Alberta. Particularly, Albertans need to know and understand. If they're not aware of this story and where it's at, they need to know, because if they're not, they will be blindsided by what comes after, and that's a whole other situation. We can stop it before it gets there, in my opinion. So last thoughts here on this today before I let you go, Lanny, and we get back on Thursday with Stacy.
Yeah. I just please, come out, create that community again and stand in your truth in a beautiful way, though. Show people that, hey, this is my moral line and this is how I show it for my neighbor. If you see something that's happening like this, or if you're experiencing that, just keep your integrity and please stand in your truth. That's all of us can do if we come together. It's about the
Yeah.
humanity at this point. We're going to have as much humanity as we choose to have on a go forward. History is being written right now. And the landscape that we're going to have in 5 years is being chiseled out right now. This is why we can't sit back and just hope that everything works out. We have to stand for the rule of law, most definitely.
I
Yeah.
have a huge amount of interest in law. That was when I grew up. That was one of the few things I actually did at one point dream about being was a lawyer, and I dabbled in a lot of learning about it, and I have great respect for the law, but I don't have much respect for the way people are abusing that law. So we need to differentiate,
Mhm.
I think, between the people and the law, and not to do that. And this, goes to the point where you were speaking. Love the courts, hate the criminals.
Mhm.
Stand against the criminals, but do it peacefully in the courts. That's respecting the courts. We need to do that if we want to have a just and fair, safe society moving forward. We're going to need the good ones that are in there. So I greatly appreciate that little last gold nugget at the end there, because it's so easy to get emotionally upset when you see these kinds of abuses being levied against innocent people. It's hard to keep swallowing it day
Mhm.
after day after day, and I'm so proud of you ladies for doing it and holding your heads high and knowing, what's in front of you and doing it anyway. So proud of that. So I'm going to let you
Thank
go
you.
and have at least a moment of peace this evening, and because I'm going to be badgering you and Stacy over the
Mhm.
next couple of days for a lot, because I'm not going to let this go. I'm an Albertan through and through, no matter where I am, and this is my fight as much as it is everybody else's, and we can do a lot more. We've only got a couple of days, but I think we can do everything we need to do if we have community, and that's why
Mhm.
we're here. So.
Thank you, Wayne. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you so much. Yeah,
I'm just a big
appreciate
mouth
it.
that don't like to be told to shut up. So
It works.
it works. It works.
Yeah,
Thanks, Lanny.
thank you.
Uh, so did y'all get what out of that? What I got out of that? It was an emotional roller coaster ride. A whole lot of truth. When you see and dig deeper into this case and story, you guys will understand there was no way we would cover this in an hour. The amount of abuses that they have levied against this family is staggering, and I think that would have been far too much to try and cram into one show. So Thursday night, 6 p.m. Central, do the math wherever you are on that, guys. Tune back in, and we'll talk to Stacy and get the from the horse's mouth what it's been like in this story, and well, by Thursday, we'll have a plan of action to assembled. We'll have everything you guys need, all the information you guys are going to need to fight this fight with them, and protect and stand up for your communities, guys. That's ultimately, at the end of the day, how we win this. I do believe that there is a huge appetite for out there for folks that want this. You want this. And now that you guys are seeing people that are having some victories, and I don't necessarily mean this particular case, but I'll tell you what, this is a victory to me in the moral in the moral fight. And we are seeing that enough of these moral battles are starting to turn into some other victories, i.e., that case where an entire city's council has been fired. So keep it up, guys. Stay strong. Support those guys that are doing the fighting in any way, shape, or form that you can. I love you all. Stay Canadian. We're going to be doing a bunch of other different stuff. This is a community, and we don't just serve the truth, we're serving solutions. So stay tuned over the next few days. You guys are going to see opportunity to take part in other things as well. But for now, I love you all. Stay Canadian, and we will see you on Thursday. Thursday, 6 o'clock. Oops.